Starting. This is the real start. Hello, welcome everyone. Nice to see you. First time I've done a Facebook Live video in quite some time, and this will appear on YouTube as well. And I just want to share a translation I just did this morning, and it's really a remarkable verse. So I'm going to give you a little background on it first. And my video is freezing, but hopefully it's still coming across to you okay. Experimenting with a new setup here. I'm at Tantrika Institute, Portugal, where we do not have the strongest internet. But as usual, the most important thing is the audio, is listening to the words, not the quality of the video. So I hope that you bear with that. Okay, so I grew up, well, from the age of 16, pretty much, chanting this Sanskrit hymn or stotra called the ЩРީ-GURU-GީTÀ. And this is a long text chant, about 182 verses. It takes 45 minutes to chant or so. And in my guru's ashram, we used to chant this every morning at 5:30 a.m. together with other assorted kirtans that went with it. So the morning mantra practice was almost an hour and a half every morning. And the central part of this was this ЩРީ-GURU-GީTÀ. And this is a text that claims to derive from the Skanda Purana, but in fact does not. Well, the verse that claims that was appended later by somebody else. In fact, the Guru-Gītā first appears, as far as we know, in a text called the Guru Charitra, which is about 500 years old. It appears as the 49th chapter in that text, but scholars have argued there's good reasons to believe that it was inserted in that text and in fact is older, and certainly some of the verses in the Guru-Gītā consist of, well, were extracted from tantric sources. So scholars call the Guru-Gītā a quasi-tantric text, which is appropriate because it mixes together elements of bhakti, devotionalism, with Vedanta philosophy, but it also definitely has verses that are quintessentially tantric, that can only have come from tantric sources. So some of these verses are very mysterious, including the verse that's prefixed to the very beginning of the text. So what I'm going to share with you today is just the first 3 or 4 verses of the ЩРީ-GURU-GީTΑ, which one could argue contain a complete teaching, you know. So this is typical of Sanskrit texts, or, you know, the great authors anyway, try to pack the essence of what they have to say in the very first verse of their text, or in the very first chapter, or in the very first few verses, right? So in most texts, the seed of what the text has to say is right there at the beginning, and then is unfolded, you know, at length throughout the entire text, right? And sometimes this is done more adroitly than others. It's done in a very simple way. For example, in the Bhagavad Gita, where the first line says, Dharma-kshetre Kurukshetre, which, if we just translate it colloquially, is essentially saying the field of dharma, the field in which you work out what constitutes right action, is your own backyard, Kurukshetra. And those who know the story that the text is embedded in will understand why I translate it that way. And that, in a sense, is the seed teaching, the bija of the whole text, right? But in sometimes in other texts we find really densely packed verses, meaning verses densely packed with meaning, which really do contain everything that the text has to say in this sort of microcosmic form. So, Abhinavagupta is an author who certainly follows this convention. One can argue that his signature verse that begins Vimala Kala, contains really everything he has to say in seed form. It's the verse at the beginning of Tantra Loka and Tantra Sara. Anyway, turning back to the Guru-Gītā, we have this verse at the beginning, which claims to be a Dhyana-śloka. And a Dhyana-śloka is a verse that tells you how to meditate or how to visualize a specific deity, right? So the Dhyana-śloka of Saraswati, very famous, begins Ya kundendu tushārahara dhavala, describes exactly how to visualize her. And that's pretty much the whole of the verse. At the end it says, please remove my ignorance and protect me from my own stupidity. But most of that verse, right, is a description of how to visualize her. That's what a Dhyana-śloka is. It's a verse that teaches you how to visualize a deity. But at the beginning of the Guru-Gītā, the Dhyana-śloka that describes the guru principle is very mysterious and very interesting and not at all easy to translate. It doesn't describe how to visualize a physical guru at all. It describes how to meditate on the guru tattva, the principle of guru, which in the traditional interpretive etymology, guru means that which brings you from darkness to light. So that includes, of course, all your teachers and all that teaches you in this universe, right? Whatever facilitates the process of moving from the darkness of ignorance to the light of awareness. That is guru. That's a traditional understanding, right? So, of course, in the modern period, in India and in the West, the word has become reduced to this comparatively trivial meaning of a human teacher or pedestalized cult leader or something like that. But the word guru actually has this great profundity to it. Okay, so the shloka I'm about to recite for you and translate, I believe has never been translated correctly before. That's for, I would say, 3 reasons. It's a bit difficult to interpret the grammar, but not so hard. I think no really good Sanskritist has attempted a translation, or rather published a translation of it. That's one problem. And also it requires some understanding of esoteric tantric teachings in order to translate this verse correctly. Without knowing some key pieces of technical terminology in Tantra, I don't think you could translate this verse correctly. And indeed, I would argue nobody has. And it's a very beautiful verse. And if you compare the translation I'm about to offer to those that are found elsewhere, you'll see they're very different indeed. And actually, I'm going to invite my esteemed colleagues and brothers and buddies, Ben Williams and Jason Schwartz, to examine my translation. I consider them peers, right? We're all at about the same level of Sanskrit skill, and chime in on some of these really beautiful and esoteric teachings embedded in this verse. Okay, so here's the verse. Well, here I'm pasting in the chat window all the verses. If I could just get the software to work. Okay. So the verse I'm speaking of again is this Dhyana-śloka, right? And it goes like this. Haṁsābhyāṁ parivṛtta-patra-kamalair divyair jagat-kāraṇair viśvotkīrṇam aneka-deha-nilayaiḥ svacchandam ātmecchayā Tad-dyotaṁ pada-śāmbhavaṁ caraṇaṁ dīpāṅkura-grāhiṇaṁ pratyakṣākṣara-vigrahaṁ guru-padaṁ dhyāyed vibhuṁ śāśvatam. One should meditate on the eternal, all-pervasive state of the Guru, which is the imperishable embodiment before your very eyes. One should meditate on the form of practice and conduct which holds the flame of the lamp, the Śāmbhava state, which illumines that spontaneous freedom which is freely inscribed in everything in existence by the divine causes of the world that have all bodies as their abode, and which are symbolically represented within the lotuses, or chakras, whose petals are rotated by hum and sa. Okay, now that I speak this translation out loud live to you guys, I realize I could easily spend an hour unpacking it. I'm not going to do that now. We'll just get at least an initial understanding of what's going on in this sublime verse. So it's instructing us, okay, guru-padaṁ dhyāyed. One should meditate on the state of the Guru. What is this state of the Guru, or level, you could translate? I think state is better. Well, we're told that it's imperishable, that it's eternal and all-pervasive. So right away we know we're not talking about a physical teacher, right? You couldn't say that a physical teacher, however wonderful, is eternal and all-pervasive. Okay, so one should meditate on the eternal, all-pervasive state of the Guru, which is the pratyakṣākṣara-vigrahaṁ, the imperishable embodiment before your very eyes. Well, what could that possibly mean? I would argue it must mean the world. The world, which, anyway, as far as our Sanskrit authors knew, was going to last forever. It's not what scientists say, but perhaps we can take jagat in the sense of universe, not in the sense of planet Earth, but the state of the Guru, the principle of the Guru, is embodied as the imperishable world before your very eyes, if you can see it truly, clearly, as it is. But we also have a pun here, what's called shlesha in Sanskrit, a double meaning, because akshara also means phoneme, and is commonly used in tantric verses like these to mean phoneme, a sound of the Sanskrit alphabet, right? Akshara, a phoneme, is a sound of the Sanskrit alphabet. So the double meaning here is that the state of the Guru is the embodiment of all the phonemes in visible form. So it's said in the linguistic mysticism of the Trika lineage that the phonemes of Sanskrit represent or express the building blocks of reality itself, and that the principles which they represent and express form the entirety of the universe. That is to say, the tattvas and the shaktis that constitute the entire universe are said to be expressed by the 50 phonemes of the Sanskrit language. So that's the double meaning here. Akshara meaning imperishable, but also meaning phonemes. Okay. So then we're told, dhyāyed, again, reading the verb again, one should meditate on the caraṇaṁ, the form of practice and conduct, which is dīpāṅkura-grāhiṇaṁ, which holds the flame of the lamp. Elusive language, elliptical language, right? The form of practice, of spiritual practice, and the form of conduct of living in the world that holds the flame of the lamp. So this probably means, right, the flame represents the innermost self, the Atman, right? And that which holds the flame of the lamp, that which creates a container for the shining forth of the flame of your essence nature. So one should meditate on, contemplate, and consider that form of spiritual practice and conduct, way of being in the world, which holds the flame of the lamp, this innermost flame. Now we're given more information, though, that the form of practice and conduct being spoken of ultimately is the Śāmbhava state, the divine state of Shiva. That's what Śāmbhava means, the divine state of Shiva. So the Śāmbhava state is another term for liberation, the goal of the path, full awakeness. And what the verse says, this Śāmbhava state illumines that svacchandam, that spontaneous freedom, which is freely inscribed in everything in existence. Svacchanda, spontaneous freedom, is inscribed, as if engraved, in everything in existence. Everything in existence, in other words, expresses and exists in relationship with the spontaneous freedom of consciousness itself, which gives rise to this entire universe. But who does the engraving, as it were, in this metaphor? Who has inscribed spontaneous freedom in every particle of this world and every experience of this world, for those who have the eyes to see that liberated vision? That's what's seen. But who has inscribed? We're told the jagat-kāraṇas, the causes of the world. Now here's where special tantric technical terminology comes in, that there's this term, cause deities, karana devatas. The cause deities are the deities that are said to exist in the chakras of the human body, or are activated by the yogi or the yogini in the chakras of the energy body. So the cause deities, for example, are Brahma and Rudra and Ishvara and Sadashiva, and these are discussed in some length in other sources and other teachings that I've given, and we can talk about them more another time. But in each chakra of the energy body, there exists a cause deity, one of the forces that cause the universe of experience to blossom forth. Okay, so that state of that spontaneous freedom is freely inscribed in everything in existence by these divine causes of the world, these deities such as Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Ishvara, Sadashiva, and Mahadevi, the goddess, to give the full list there. And they have all bodies as their abode, we're told in the verse. Aneka-deha-nilayaiḥ. They have all bodies as their abode, meaning the cause deities exist within all embodied creatures. Okay, and they are symbolically represented within the chakras or the lotuses, whose petals, we're told, are rotated by hum and sa. What could that possibly mean? Well, actually, it's perfectly clear to a tantric scholar. But other Sanskritists, no matter how skilled they are in Sanskrit, are not going to be able to interpret this correctly because they don't know the tantric teaching being alluded to here. Okay, so it's a matter of specialized knowledge. Hum and sa, these bija mantras, hum and sa, also represent or stand for the inhale and the exhale. And the inhale and the exhale in some sources are said to spin the chakras, spin the lotus wheels of the energy centers. So in visualizations of the lateral channels in which they crisscross back and forth, that's a representation of this teaching, that the inhale and the exhale, as it were, rotate the energy centers. So the meaning is actually quite clear in the context of having that knowledge. Okay, so maybe we can do at some point a longer teaching, probably over on the Tantrika Online platform, on this verse, because again, it's possible to unpack it further. But for now, I'll just recite it again and read the translation straight through. Haṁsābhyāṁ parivṛtta-patra-kamalair divyair jagat-kāraṇair viśvotkīrṇam aneka-deha-nilayaiḥ svacchandam ātmecchayā Tad-dyotaṁ pada-śāmbhavaṁ tu caraṇaṁ dīpāṅkura-grāhiṇaṁ pratyakṣākṣara-vigrahaṁ guru-padaṁ dhyāyed vibhuṁ śāśvatam. One should meditate on the eternal all-pervasive state of the Guru, which is the imperishable body before your very eyes. One should meditate on the form of practice and conduct which holds the flame of the lamp, the Śāmbhava state, which illuminates that spontaneous freedom which is freely inscribed in everything in existence by the divine causes of the world that have all bodies as their abode, and which are symbolically represented within by the lotuses whose petals are rotated by hum and sa. So following this complex verse, we get 4 verses in very simple Sanskrit. It's quite a contrast. These 4 verses are in simple Sanskrit that even a second-year Sanskrit graduate student could read, no problem. So I'll read you these verses. And these verses contain the first teaching of the Guru-Gītā, which I argue is all you need. That first teaching is everything in this text. So, first verse. Kailasa shikare ramye bhakti sandhana nayakam pranamya parvati bhaktya shankaram parivṛtta-patra. On the beautiful summit of Mount Kailasa, Parvati, bowing with reverence to the one who leads us to union with devotion, asked her beloved Shankara this question. Shri-Devyuvacha, the blessed goddess said, Om Namo Deva Devesha Parat Parajagadguru Sadashiva Mahadeva Guru Diksham Pradehi Me. Salutations, O Lord of all the gods, O higher than the highest, O teacher of the world, O eternal Shiva, O great divinity, give me initiation into the Guru principle. Give me, please, Guru Diksha, this initiatory understanding of what Guru really means or signifies. She goes on. Kena margena bhosvamin dehi brahmamayo bhavet tvankirpam kurume swamin namami charanautava. O blessed Lord, O Swami, by what path may an embodied being become the absolute, or become aware of her identity, the absolute, to be more precise? O Swami, by what path may an embodied being become the absolute? Bestow your kripa upon me. Bestow your tender compassion and grace upon me. Tvam kirpam gurume swamin. Please, O Swami, bestow your kripa upon me. Namami charanautava. I bow to your 2 feet. And then the response comes. And by the way, this dialogue format that we also see at the beginning of the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra is typical of the Tantric scriptures. So the Guru-gītā is explicitly implying that it is a Tantric scripture. The very words with which it begins, the Kailasa Shikare Ramye, are found at the beginning of many, many Tantric scriptures. And this form of dialogue also, where we get Shri Devi Uvacha and then Ishvara Uvacha. This is absolutely typical of the form and structure of Tantric scripture, also known as agamic texts. So we get the response. This is the last verse I'm sharing here in this video. Ishvara Uvacha Mama Rupasi Devi Tvam Tvat-prityartam vadamyaham lokopakaraka prashno na kenapi kartapura. The Lord said, O goddess, you are my very self. You are my very form. Mama Rupasi Tvam. You are the embodiment of me. If we take this in the tantric sense of consciousness and energy, where Shiva represents consciousness and Shakti is energy, the energy that expresses as this entire world, then consciousness is saying to his beloved energy and matter, you are my very form. You are the very form of consciousness. That Shakti is Shiva embodied. It's one way to interpret this very simple, linguistically simple, beautiful statement. Mama Rupasi Devi Tvam. O goddess, you are my very form. Tvat prityartam vadamyaham. I speak this truth out of love for you. Priti, the word priti, means kindness, grace, affection, and love all together. I speak this truth out of love and affection for you. This question, this prashna, this question, which is for the benefit of all beings, has never been asked before. Or you could translate, this question that you're asking me has never before been asked for the benefit of all beings exclusively. Meaning to say, one way to translate this final line of the fourth verse is, nobody has ever asked this question before you, beloved Parvati, with pure motive. Meaning the question is being asked by you for the benefit of all beings. Lokopakaraka. This has never been asked before, solely for the benefit of all beings. And that's why, out of love for you, I give you the answer. You are my very form. So those are the first verses of the ЩРީ-GURU-GÍTΑ. And like I say, that's the complete teaching. You can read the whole text if you like. And if you do, and many of you have, I encourage you to see that the word guru there throughout this text means guru tattva, the guru principle, not a physical teacher. Okay, so that's the end, and lovely messages here in the live chat thread from people in Australia who are now going to sleep, and this was their little bedtime teaching, and then other people who are just waking up in the US saying, great way to start the day, beautiful way to start the day. And it's wonderful to catch those of you in many different time zones. That was a stroke of luck, I think. Yeah. So those of you in Tantric Yoga Now group, I will post the translation for you to contemplate there. Om.